What? Alright, what do you want me to tell you? How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Zayin, Daf 47 of Masechta Kiddushin. Friends, your friends, the people might come back in the middle. They're definitely going to come back in the middle of the recording. What can I tell you? Now, the first part of the Daf, we continue kind of wrapping up that piece about, she eats the dates as she gets them, and that whole exciting sugya. And then we get to the sugya of Mekadesh B'milveh, betrothing a fellow betrothed a fella with a loan. So, I would say, friends, it's not the easiest stuff. Let's say that. Okay. That being said, we're just gonna do it. Omer Rava says, Rava, we're starting at all the way at the bottom of Mem Vav Mud Beis. We're already now at the top of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Lo shanu ella de Omer la bazo vazo aval Omer la be'elu afilu ocheles nami mekudeshes. So we had said that if even in the event if he gives her these dates, and right, so okay, so we had made a distinction between if he says his kadshi multiple times, right? So then each one would have to have a shavar pruta, or if he says vazo, right? He doesn't say his kadshi multiple times. So then, if cumulatively, if in total they're with the shavar pruta, so then she is mikudeshes. So now we said but if she eats them as she receives them, so then we can't add them all up. We there would have to be we said, at least according to, was it Rav Asi? That, oh gosh, I can't see anything. Rav Ami, that the last one would have to be a shavar pruta, but this is only, so now says the Gemara, says Rava, lo shanu elo de omer lo vazo. If he says that I'm being mekadesh you with this date and the other date, so since he's mentioning the dates separately, so his intention is really only is complete after she receives the third date, and each of the previous dates up until then are considered a loan. However, aval omer lo ba'elu, but if he says with these, well then afilu ocheles nami mikudeshes, even if she's been, even if she eats them, still we can even what does Rashi say? Aval be'elu mikabalas arishona lo bas liyada b'toras milved mishenigmar adibor hiknem la b'toras kiddushin. Right. Achla midida ka'achla. So Rashi says that if he says that I'm being mekadesh you with these, so then even because he didn't say with this and this and this, but he said with these, so then once she receives the first one, so then she already, right, it's already his intention, right? What does Rashi say? He says mikabalas rishona, once she receives the first of the dates, lo basli ad b'toras milveh, she's not receiving them as a loan. The misha nigmar adibor, once he completes his speech, when he says ba'elu hiknam lo, he was makna them to her b'toras kiddushin as kiddushin v'chil achla midida ka'achla. At that point, she's eating her own stuff. Sorry, this light is driving me crazy. I don't know why it's driving me crazy, so I'm just going to turn it off, and that's that. So they are hers, and and it's not a loan, right? The whole issue with one at a time was that it was a loan, and you can't be mekadesh with a loan. Oh, here are the people. Damn it. So now I always feel like it's the complicated stuff. So then it's hers, and she can do whatever she wants. We could still say that as long as cumulatively they are equal to a pruta, so then miku desha. So ki ka'achla midinasha ka'achla, she's eating her own stuff in that case, and oh no, they're right on the phone. Guys, I'm recording. Alright, fine. So ki ka'achla midinasha ka'achla, so then she's eating her own stuff, and we can add them all up together, and there's no issue of like milveh, being mekadesh milveh or anything like that. Tani kavasi de Rava, and we have a brisa that supports Rava's assertion. Hiskachili ba'olon brimon ve'egos, that if a fellow says to a fellow, be mikudeshes to me with a acorn, a pomegranate, a nut, or she'omerla, or if he says to her, hiskachili ba'elu, be mikudeshes to me with these, im yesh bikulan shaviputa, if in total they are a shaviputa mikudeshes, ve'im lav, if in total they are not a shaviputa, ena mikudeshes, so then she is not mikudeshes. So in total they have to be shaviputa. Now bazo uvazo im yesh bechulim shaviputa mikudeshes v'im lav ena mikudeshes. Same halacha here as well, right? So if he says bazo, so it's the same halacha that if in total it's a shaviputa, so then she's mikudeshes. If in total there is no shaviputa, then she's not mikudeshes. Now if he says bazo notato v'ochalto, if he says with this one and then she takes it and eats it, bazo notato v'ochalto, and then she takes this one and eats it. V'od bazo, in mikudeshes ad sheyeh ba'achas mein shaviputa, there would have to be in one of them a shaviputa. Okay. So haibe olon berimon uve'egos echidami. So now what's the deal with the acorn, the pomegranate, and the nut? Ilem da amayla o be'olon, o berimon, o be'egos. If he says, I'm being mekadesh you either with the acorn, or with the pomegranate, or with the nut, what do you mean that if in total it's a shaviputa, then they're mikudeshes? He said either or. Each one, right, there would have to be a shaviputa in one, right, in at least one of the individuals, not in total. Ve'ela be'olon uvirimon uve'egos. Okay, so if we suggest that it's saying with the acorn and the pomegranate and the nut, hainu vazo, that is with this and that and the other thing. Se'ela lav de omar la be'elu. So rather, it must be talking about where he says be'elu, with these, which is like what Rav is talking about. Ha midiktani seifa Osha Omar Law, his kachli ba'elu, michadoresha la ba'elu askinun. But we had said, the Brisa itself says, right, that, or if he says, be mikudeshes to me ba'elu, with these, michlal, implying that the first part, with the acorn, the pomegranate, and the nut, la ba'elu askinun, is not talking about elu, perushe ka mifaresh, to which the Gemara says, no, that whole Reisha is talking about Elu. It's explaining. It's kachli ba'olam brimon be'egos. Be mukadeshes to me with an acorn, with a pomegranate, with a nut. Keitzad. How is this? Kigon de amar lo is kachli ba'elu. For example, if he says ba'elu, so the whole first part is talking about ba'elu. The katane seifa, and in the last segment of the Brisa, what does it say? Bazo notalto v'achalto. Im yesh ba'achas mehem shaviputa mikudeshes, and he says that in the last part of the Brisa, it says that when it's talking about bazo, when he says with this one, and then she eats it, so then we say so you would have to have one of them be a shaviputa in order for the Kiddushin to be good. If not, then it's no Kiddushin. The ilu reisha, but in the previous part, in the first part, where we're talking about the pomegranate, the acorn, the nut, where we said it's talking about elu, Loka maflig ben ocheles limanachas. We don't make a distinction between if she's eating it or not, implying that it makes no difference. Even if she is eating it, it's still okay. Shmamino kolecha do amar lo ba'elu kiko achla minafsha ko achla shmamino. So therefore, we see that, like Rava says, that if you say ba'elu, so then even if you eat it, even if she eats it as she receives them, it's no problem. And she's eating her own stuff. It's not considered like mekadesh b'milveh, and it is fine. Now, says the Gemara, so this Brisa makes sense according to Rab Ami, who says that when the Mishnah is talking about eating these dates, where it's talking about the seifa, it's talking about when he says his kachli vazo. And on that, and then the seifa of the Mishnah says that, if she takes one and then eats it, so Rab Ami had said that if the last one is a shavar pruta, then she's mikudeshes, but the previous ones were mekadesh b'milva and they were a problem. So umay ache ba'achas mein shavar pruta ache ba'achrona shavar pruta, and Rabbi Ami explains our Mishnah that when it says that one of them has to be a shavar pruta, it means the last one has to be a shavar pruta. Hachinam. So here also in this brisa, when we're talking about vazo, achi ba'achrona shavar pruta, the last one would have to be a shavar pruta, just like the same way that Rabbi explained our Mishnah. El Rav Shmuel da'amri tarvayu areisha koi. But according to Rav and Shmuel, who said that eating it is talking about the ratio when it says hiskad shili bitmarzo, hiskad shili bazo. So ve'ocheles it's trichele, and the chiddush is that even though she's eating it, still needs to be a shavar pruta. Hacha klale kachashiv prata prate lo kachashiv. But the problem is that in this brisa we're only talking about general things like elu, like bazo, vazo, vazo, and yet we're talking about her eating one of them, and we're not talking about specifics like Rav and Shmuel want to say that eating is talking about, like when it says iskachi betmarzo, iskachi bazo. The brisa isn't talking about those kinds of specifics. It's talking about more general things like elu and bazo, vazo, vazo, which are cumulative. So Hamani Rebbe, the last part of that brisa is Rebbe the Omar Loshna Kazayis Loshna Kazayis Uchazayis Prata Have. It doesn't matter if you specify Kazayis or Kazayis Uchazayis. It's still going to be considered a specification, and therefore the last part of the brisa when it says Bazo Natatu Vachato Ve'od Bazo, it's talking about specifics like hiskachili bitmarzo, hiskachili bazo, and on that we're talking about where she's eating it, and we're saying one of them has to be a shavar pruta, and it's like that would be the way that Rav and Shmuel would explain it. So now we move in to the sugya of mikadesh b'milveh, being mikadesh a fella with a loan. All right. Amar Rav, says Rav, HaMekadesh b'milveh ain't a mekudeshes. If a fellow is mekadesh a fella with a loan, it's no good, because milveh lo tzah nitna, because a loan is meant to be used. Wow, there's a lot going on in that statement. What does that mean? So it means bigadol that if Ruvain lends $1,000, if a fellow lends $1,000 to a fella, and then a week later, he comes to her and says, I lent you $1,000, keep it. Keep it, don't return it, it's yours. And let's get married. And that's going to be a kesef Kiddushin, Ambi Rayarat Mekudeshes Li, with this waived loan. So, excuse me, sorry mom. So, okay. So, Einu Mekudeshes. That does not work. And Rav says because milveh lo tzah nitna, because a loan is meant to be used, to be given, right? If he gives her $1,000 to go buy pizza, she's gonna go and she's gonna spend that $1,000 on pizza, and then the expectation is she's then gonna get a job at a pizza shop, and she's gonna make back the money, and she's gonna return other money back to him, right? She'll go to the bank, say, hey, excuse me, can you give me a $1,000 bill? And she'll take the brand new $1,000 bill and return it back to him, but not the same one that she received. The same value, she received $1,000, she's returning $1,000, but a different physical bill. Because the assumption is that if he gives her $1,000 and a $1,000 bill, she's going to spend that $1,000 bill and return a different one. And therefore the assumption is that she doesn't have the $1,000 bill right now, and therefore he's not actually giving her anything, that $1,000 bill she spent on pizza. Okay, now, so again, Amar Rav says Rav, Mekadesh b'milveh, a fellow who tries to be Mekadesh, a fellow by waiving a loan, ain't Mekudeshes. That doesn't work, because milveh lo tzah nitna, because a loan is given with the intention of being spent, and that at a later point, she's going to come up with some other money and return it. And therefore, by waiving this loan, it's not assuming that he's actually giving her anything at that moment. Let's say that this concept of milveh lo tzah nitna is taka machlokas tanoim, Hamikadesh b'milveh, that a fellow who's mikadesh with a milveh, eina mikudeshes. She is not, if you're mikadesh with a milveh, eina mikudeshes. V'yesh omrim mikudeshes, and some say that Shitaka is mikudeshes. My la b'okum ifri. Let's say that the machloket between the Tanakama and the Yesh Omrim is the ma'asov milveh lo tzah nitna, that the Tanakama says milveh lo tzah nitna, and therefore if he waives the loan, he's not actually giving her anything. Umar sover milveh lav lo tzah nitna, and the Yesh Omrim says that milveh lav lo tzah nitna is not, I guess, I don't know exactly understand how this makes sense, but when a person gives a loan, it's not given in order to, I don't know, be spent. I don't exactly know what that would mean otherwise, but therefore when he waives it, he's giving it to her, and she's mikudeshes. V'tizbira. But fact the Gemara, 1 second. Ema Seifa. If we can continue in that price, what does it say? V'shavim b'mecher shezeh kana. But they agree that it works by a sale. So for example, if Shimon sells his house to Ruvain, right, his property to Ruvain, so now Ruvain, so it's $1,000. Ruvain is going to be koneh that property b'kesef, right? Because karka could be acquired through kesef. So in order for Ruvain to be koneh this property from Shimon, he has to pay Shimon $1,000. Now we're saying that, right? In the Sefer says v'shavim, but everyone agrees b'mecher shezeh kana that it works, meaning Ruvain is buying Shimon's property. Ruvain now needs to pay Shimon, but Ruvain says to Shimon, hey Shimon, by the way, you owe me $1,000, so keep the $1,000, and now I will own your property. So basically, he's acquiring property with a loan, and we're saying that everybody agrees that when it comes to the acquisition of property, you can use a loan. But but if you say that a loan is meant to be spent, well then b'mai kani, what is Ruvain being koneh Shimon's property with, right? Shimon doesn't have the money, right? Meaning Ruvain's saying to Shimon, I have to pay you $1,000 for this property, but remember, I lent you $1,000, so just keep it. But if we're saying that he's being koneh b'kesef, and when he lent that money, Shimon had already spent it on pizza, so Shimon doesn't have that money right now. So why does everybody agree that Ruvain could be koneh Shimon's property with kesef based on a loan that he had lent Shimon, if that money of the loan is assumed that it was the pizza owner has it now? So Amr Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Huna Charvin Mukim La, Rav Huna explains this brisa that talks about being Mekadesh b'milveh actually in a different way. He says that this brisa is not talking about the classic example of Mekadesh b'milveh where you're waiving a loan. It's not talking about that. Rather, it's this an alternative, an interesting case, which is B'mili ochari, a different case of Ba'achob Ma'eskina, and this is what the Bryce is talking about. Kigon, for example, She'omar lo, a fellow says to a fellow, his kad shili b'mana. Be mikudeshes to me with $100. I'm being mikudeshes. Here's $100. That's your kesef kiddushin. V'nimtza mana chaser dinar. Turns out it's only $99. It's a $99 bill. He said, I'm being mikudeshes with a $100 bill. Turns out it's a $99 bill. So Mar Sover, so the Tanakama says Eina Mikudeshes because Ksifa lo milsa limizboi. She doesn't feel comfortable asking for the dollar, and therefore she's not going to ask for it. But she's also not, she's not going to feel like she received what she was meant to receive, and she's not going to agree. She's not really going to agree to be married with it, and therefore Eina Mikudeshes because she's not going to be like, she's not really going to accept it. Umar sover lo ksifa lo milsal mizbay, whereas the Yesh Omrim says mikudeshes because it's no problem. She'll ask him for the extra dollar. It's no problem, and she's all in. She's down, and therefore it works. Ve'ela hada amar belazar. Okay, so therefore, the Tanakama says she's not going to be comfortable asking, and the Yesh Omrim says that she will be comfortable asking, and therefore she is mikudeshes. So that is okay, so why is that the situation of Mekadesh b'milveh? It's a situation of Mekadesh b'milveh because when he says he's giving her a $100 bill, but really he gave her a $99 bill, so he owes her money, and that's the milveh, right? Meaning when he's Mekadesh in a way that creates a situation of a loan where he now owes her money, is that mikudeshes or not? The Tanna Kama says, Eina mikudeshes, because she's not going to feel comfortable asking for that extra $1, and therefore she's not really going to be on board. Whereas the Yesh Omrim says mikudeshes because she has no problem asking for the $1, and it's no problem, she will be mikudeshes. Ve'elo hada amar Rebbe Elazar, but if we're saying if it's all about her being embarrassed or not to ask for the money, Rebbe Elazar had said, Iskad shili bimano, that if a fellow says, be mikudeshes to me for $100, v'nasan la dinar, but he gave her a $1 bill, hare zo mikudeshes v'yashlim, so she is mikudeshes, it works, but he owes her $99. So le mikitanoi, Amra Lishmaitis. Let's say that this statement of Rebbe Elazar, that if he's mekadesh her for $100, but he only gives her $1, then she's right there, she's mikudeshes, but he has to pay the difference. So let's say that it's taka machlokas. According to the Tanna Kama from our brisa, she would not be mikudeshes because she would be embarrassed to ask. So Amrei Mana Chaser Dinar Ksifa La Milsa. Look, the Gemara says that if he says he's giving her $100 and he only gave her $99, so I can understand why, she might be embarrassed to ask for $1, come on, she doesn't want to look cheap, he says he's giving her $100, he really gave her $99, am I really going to ask for the $1? Maybe she'll, be embarrassed to ask, but she really isn't on board to be Mekudesh just like that. But, so Ksifa La Milsalim is by Mana Chaser Tishim V'Tisha, however, if he lends her, he says he's being Mekadesh her for $100, but gives her $1, lo ksifa la milsa limizboi, she's going to have no problem saying, hey, dude, don't forget about the rest of the 99, and therefore she's going to be on board to get married, mikudeshes, and she's also going to make sure that she gets the remainder, the balance. Meisve, we have a kasha. Ha'omer li'isha, a fellow says to a fellow, Iskad shili b'pikodin sheyeshli biyodcha. Be mikudeshes to me with the pikodin that I have in your hands. What's an example of the pikodin? What's an example of the pikodin? What's an example where there's like a few things I can lend you pikodin. Some books. That's nice. Books. 10 books. Okay, so it's kachli b'pikodin sheyesh li biyodach, right? A fellow says to a fellow, look, I had left 10 books at your house. You know what? Keep the books, and it'll be kesef Kiddushin. And she's like, all right, that sounds cool. She goes home and realizes, wait, the books are gone. They got stolen, they got lost. Im nishtayir emena shove pruta mikudeshes. As long as one of the books remains, as long as there's a shove pruta remaining, okay, beseder mikudeshes, she can be mikudeshes. V'mlav ena mikudeshes. But if all of the books are gone, there's mamish nothing left, well, then she's not receiving anything, and it doesn't work for Kiddushin. Uvemilve. However, if we're talking about a loan, that if he says, look, I lent you $1,000, you know what, forget about it, it'll be kesef Kiddushin, afal pisha lo nishtayir emena shove pruta. Interestingly, even if nothing remains, there's nothing left. Mikudeshes. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishum Reb Meir, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, the name of Reb Meir, milve arei ki pikodin, that a milve is like a pikodin, that there would have to be at least a pruta left. But ad kan lo plige elo de my sover milve afagav de lo nishtayir mena shavar pruta, or my sover nishtayir mena shavar pruta in vilo nishtayir mena shavar pruta lo. So the machlok is between Reb Shimon ben Elazar and Reb Meir on the one hand, and the Tanna Kama on the other, is only about if by the loan there must remain a pruta or not. Reb Meir says yes, there has to remain a pruta. The Tanna Kama says no, even if there's not a shavar pruta, it still works. But everyone agrees. But everybody seems to be on board that of course you can be mekadesh with a milveh. The shaila is, what if it's all gone? Okay, fine. That's a shaila. But the concept of being mekadesh with a milveh, everyone seems to agree that that's fine. And therefore, so it's a kasha on Reb Meir. So Reb Meir says that, right, you cannot be mekadesh with a milveh, and yet we have a brisa where everyone seems to not Reb Meir. Rav says that you can be mekadesh with a milveh, and yet we have a brisa that seems to be saying that you cannot. Wait, what? Rav says you cannot be mekadesh with a milveh. We have a brisa that seems to be saying that you can be mekadesh with a milveh. Omar Rave, Rav says v'tizbira hamatretzta hamashbeshtoi. Do you really think that this brisa makes any sense? This brisa makes no sense. Haipikoden heichidami. What exactly is the case of this pikodin that were these books in the brisa that we're talking about? If she had accepted responsibility for them, had accepted, right, that if anything happens to them, she will pay him back, well then, now that they got lost, it's be'etzem a loan. So it's the same thing as the loan. In which case it should have the same halachas as the loan. Hainu milveh. And if she didn't accept upon herself that she would pay, right, take responsibility if anything happens to them, well, if that's the case, adetani seifa, when the seifa says that uvemilve, when it comes to a loan, afalpi shelo nishtayre meno shaver pruta, even if there's no shaver pruta remaining, mikudeshes, she is still mikudeshes. So niflog v'nesne b'didah. We should also make a distinction regarding the pikadon, regarding the deposit. But the books, when do we say that a shaver pruta must remain? Shelo kibla aleh achrayus, as long as she did not accept upon herself responsibility to pay back in the event of theft or loss. Aval kibla aleh achrayus, but if she accepted upon herself to pay him back in the event of theft or loss, in that case it has the same halachas as a milveh, and even if nothing remains, mikudeshes, she's still mikudeshes, right? So therefore we're saying that something is not right in this brisa. Something is not right in this brisa. Ela tritzachi, rather, the way to understand the brisa is in the following way. Uvemilveh, when it comes to a loan, afal pi shenishtayre mena shave pruta eina mikudeshes. Actually, when it comes to loan, even if a pruta does remain, eina mikudeshes, it does not work. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Mishum Reb Meir, milve harei ki pikadon, that a milve is like a pikadon, and if there is a shaver pruta remaining, so then she would be mikudeshes. But Ma'ika Miflige, what's the machlokas? Omer Rabba, says Rabba, ashkechosinu l'Rabbanon b'vei Rav, that says Rabba that he found the rabbis. So interestingly, by Bei Rav, Rashi says, it's basically right to the left of it, b'vei Rav, ashkechosinu l'Rabbanon b'vei Rav, and the second line of the Rashi says, T'chol heicha demari b'Bei Rav. Whenever it says Bei Rav, lav Rav ma meshu, it doesn't literally mean Rav, el b'veis hamedrashu, it means in the Beis Hamedrash. That okay, so it says Rabba, he found the students in the Beis HaMedrash. The Azvi v'Ka'amrin, they were saying, "B'milve b'rishus bailim l'chazore v'uadin la'onsin kamifke." Do you hear what we're talking about? We're talking about, this is a very interesting thing. So we were just saying milve la'otzah nitna, right? That if Shimon lends $1,000 to Reuven, the assumption is Reuven's going to go straight to the pizza shop and he's going to spend $1,000. But the interesting thing is, what happens prior to Reuven going to the pizza shop? When Shimon gives the $1,000 to Reuven and he has not yet spent $1, he hasn't spent any of it yet, what's the status of the loan at that point? So again, right, b'milve b'rishus bailim, when the loan is, right, b'milve b'rishus bailim, if the loan is still in the rishus of Shimon, the lender, l'chazore, that he can recall the loan, v'adin le'onsin, and also if anything happens to that money, if it gets stolen or something, so then it would still be Shimon's at that point, and he would be on the line. Kamiflige, that is a machlokas to my sovar. That the Tanakama holds milve b'rishus love kaima, that even though Reuven has not spent any of the money yet, it is already considered in his property. V'adin le'onsin, and also if anything happens to it, it will be Reuven's responsibility, and therefore it's considered already like a loan. And even and even if a shavar pruta remains of it, if it gets lost, eina mikudeshes, because milve lo'otzah nitna. Umay sover, whereas Reb Meir holds milve b'rishus bailim kaima, that it is still considered in the hands of the owner. Therefore, it's considered be'etzem like a pikadon ve'adin le'onsim, and the same thing would apply for onsim, that if anything happens to it, it would be on Shimon. So here also. So it's talking about a situation where none of the money has been used yet, and the question is, whose possession is it considered in? V'aminalu, and Rabbah says that he said to them, le'onsim kuli amalo plige de b'shuzlo v'kaimi. Look, with regard to onsim, right? If Shimon lends $1,000 to Reuven, and Reuven hasn't spent any of it, and then, I don't know, it gets lost or stolen, so everyone agrees that is going to be Reuven's responsibility. My time, how come? Lugar misha'ela. It's no different than if Reuven borrowed Shimon's lawnmower. Masha'ela dehadra be'eno chayv ba'onsim. The lawnmower that Reuven is going to have to give back to Shimon, and yet Reuven is still going to be chayav if anything happens to it, or if something, if it gets stolen or something. So milveh lo kol shekin, a milveh which is not expected to go back exactly, you're going to return different money. Certainly, it's not considered in the lender's possession anymore. It's considered in the borrower's possession, and the borrower is going to be responsible for onsim. But the machlokas is regarding to, can Shimon, the lender, recall the loan? Right? If Shimon lends $1,000 to Reuven hasn't spent any of it yet, can Shimon still change his mind? That according to the Tanakama, no, Shimon cannot change his mind. It's already Reuven's, and therefore it's considered milveh lo'otza nitna. Whereas according to Reb Meir, it's considered like a pikadon, that he still can ask for it back. Belahada Amar Rav Huna, that which Rav Huna says, Hashol karda mechaver, if Reuven borrows a hatchet from Shimon, Bikabo kano, only once Reuven uses it to whack a tree, at that point does the period of borrowing start. But lo bikabo, lo kano, but until he whacks a tree with the hatchet, then it's not considered like the period of borrowing has begun, and I believe Shimon would be able to ask for it back at that point. Right, until he's whacked a tree with it. So lema kitanoi amr l'shmaite. Let's say that's actually a machlokas tanoim, right? Just like we said by the loan, it's a machlokas about if he hasn't spent any of the money yet. So let's say that it's oichet a machlokas by the hatchet, that until he whacks with it, it's not considered like the borrowing period started. Lo, to which Gemara says no. Ad kan lo plige ela b'milve dehadra be'eno. Look, the machlokas is with regard to a loan, because the expectation is you're not meant to return the same money that you got. And the question is, the second you get it, is it already considered like it's yours or not? But by borrowing a hatchet where you're going to be giving back the same exact thing, everyone agrees that this item is still in the reshus of the lender until bikabo in lo bikabo lo kano, that only once he whacks the tree with it is it considered like the borrowing has begun. But until then, the borrowing has not begun, and Shimon can ask for it back. Friends, that was Daf Mem Zayin of Masechet Kiddushin. That was a very complicating daf, and I have to thank all the people in the house because they really did me a huge favor and did not make any noise. So thank you, I appreciate that, really. And it was really, really helpful. And so anyways, with the first part of the daf, we talked about some more technical stuff about being Mekadesh with like multiple dates, but like fruit dates. And then we talked about an important sugya, or a seemingly important sugya, it's a lot very involved, of Mekadesh b'milveh and milveh lo'otza nitna. That's a big yesodistic concept. So friends, that was Daf Mem Zayin of Masechet Kiddushin. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.